Hi, my name is Jim Pikarski, and I give Dharma talks at Blue Lotus Meditation Center here in Venice, Florida. Today, I would like to talk about presence. I like to use different concepts to be able to describe some very similar things, simply because sometimes people don't respond to particular ways of talking about things, and other times it's good to see it from a different direction. So, presence, what does it indicate? One thing it indicates is being in the present. So, you're in the present time, you're in the now. So, presence has this idea of really being in the now. You're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're in the present. So, in terms of time, it really indicates the now. It also means being in the room and not elsewhere. So, if you're present, you're not lost in thought, you're not off someplace, you're right here, right now, and you're paying attention to the situation. So if you're not present, you can be lost in thought, and those thoughts can be about the future or past, or they can be about someplace else. So if you're present, you're here and you're now. Another meaning of presence is gravitas, or that person has presence. Now, when we have a person who has presence, they seem to be deep, and they seem to be here now, and we really tend to pay attention to them. So a lot of times gravitas or presence indicates some kind of basic wisdom or something that makes their presence known. Now, sometimes people are not that, you don't notice them until they speak or until they display this presence. So the presence is and somehow impresses us. Another way we use presence is being present for another person. So when you're present for another person, you're truly listening. You're truly there. So there's a certain thing about presence that is associated with love and caring and compassion. When we're loving and caring and compassion, we're truly present. Um, so being in the now is the only thing that exists. The future and past are concepts. In other words, we can only imagine them. We can imagine through our memories the past, and we can imagine the future through our different plans and fantasies about the future. So the future and the past only exist in thought. So really, to be in the past or in the future means, in a way, to be lost in thought. Um, we're not actually there, we're just fantasizing. The thing is that we access presence throughout the day. It's not something that's foreign to us. We all know presence. So there's small moments when we're just present. You're stirring your tea and you're watching the tea swirl with a spoon. As you're watching it, you're not thinking about anything else. You're just looking at that. And because you're looking at that, you're present. Um, the pleasure of eating your own favorite food. So if you have the pleasure of eating your favorite food, when you're savoring that food, you're very present because you want to experience the taste of it. You savor the flavor. So one thing about pleasure tends to draw us into presence because the sensations are very pleasant when we're involved with pleasure. So when you're having an orgasm or getting a massage, you are really present for those things because they feel good. So pleasure invites us into the moment, whereas pain invites us to escape the moment. Um, Listening to music or enjoying something that takes our complete attention is also something that brings us into presence. So sometimes you can see this when people are playing a sport. When somebody's playing a sport, they can get into the zone. Now, if you've ever been into the zone when you're playing something, and I think everybody does this to a little bit, even if we're not that good, but really good players can be in the zone for extended periods of time. Now, one thing for the player, it's very pleasant. They're just with it, they're there fully. And, a person not in the zone will be more lost in thought. So it's hard to stay in the zone if you're worrying about your performance. Worrying about your performance and being in the zone are almost incompatible. Um, so thinking probably doesn't happen at all. All the thinking and learning has taken place ahead of time. You learned how to do this, and now you just know how to do it really well. And there's no blocks. You're just allowing it to happen. There's a story of the centipede. The centipede was asked which leg, by the toad, it was asked which legs go after which. And the centipede began to think about this and fell into a ditch. So it's like a centipede just, his legs move automatically. Doesn't have to think about them. And a lot of stuff we do, we're just in the zone and we do it automatically. Sometimes you'll get up and wash a dish or do something, um, you know, go brush your teeth or whatever, and it just happens. It's not something you have to think about. You know how to do that. So even that can be in the zone. But typically when we're doing these other things, we're probably thinking about something else. So even an intellectual task can take our whole attention. So writing inquiry into something, the spiritual inquiry, can take our full attention. And because it takes our full attention, some intellectual tasks can be full of presence and be pleasant. So we can be present when we're thinking, or we can be present when we're not thinking. So presence is its own delight. A natural joy arises in us when we are fully present, usually. It has also a component of concentration. In Buddhism, we develop concentration through meditation. And the thing about meditation and developing concentration is that when we really get concentrated and our mind slows down or stops, it's very pleasant. It's very pleasant, and we are totally present too. We're there fully. We're not lost in thought, of course, because our thoughts have stopped. One of the problems with presence is that we start mistaking the activity for presence itself. So if something brings us into presence, a lot of times what will happen is that we will get addicted to that activity because we mistakenly view the activity as the thing that is, yes, it is pleasant, but we can get into presence anytime and experience that pleasantness, and we don't need the activity to do it. Now certainly some activities stimulate certain senses that are more pleasant than others. Certainly that occurs, but there is some basic pleasure just from being present itself. It's interesting with addiction, people will say, well, alcohol makes me feel really good, and then they'll get involved in alcohol, and the alcohol stops them from feeling good after a while. They drink and they can't get that feeling back. Now the thing in that is because the presence is, the pleasure is being disconnected from presence, and presence is extremely important. It really sustains it, and if you're always present when you're feeling pleasant, then it tends to continue. So pleasure can be a doorway to presence, and that's one of the reasons that craving occurs. We start craving these things that give us pleasure. So we need to cultivate presence that is not conditional. It's not conditional on something else. It's not conditional upon having a drink. It's not conditional about having our favorite food. It just is. And this is one of the importances of meditation, because in meditation we can develop presence, and we can just feel good from just sitting there, because what happens is we slow down our mind and we just become very present to ourselves. And this can be very peaceful, very, very, a lot of joy in meditation, once you develop the capacity to do that. So as we practice meditation, we develop kind of a muscle, a capacity to get involved in presence more and more easily. So sometimes we'll even get to the point where we can feel that presence outside of meditative sessions. And that's really the goal too, is to really be able to have it extend throughout our whole life. So we're experiencing deep peace and joy in just being. And it really is like the experience of meditation, particularly shamatha or concentration. So presence is delightful in itself. Thought tends to interfere with this, so particularly if we get lost in thought. Now, if you're going to have an orgasm or something, you're typically not lost in thought. As a matter of fact, if you start thinking too much when you're having an orgasm, a lot of times it will block the orgasm. And this is one of the problems that a lot of people who have sexual dysfunctions. They think too much, and because they think too much and they worry too much, worry is not a pleasant sensation, so it doesn't make you feel sexual very much. Once we get real clarity about what presence is and get a real sense of it through meditation, or you can be present right now while you're listening to this. Once we get a sense of it, it's good to understand what it is, to separate from the activities that is actual presence, and you can bring presence to your life anytime, any place. So we can become more present. We can even become more present when there's pain. And when there's pain in our life, if we become more present, then we're less likely to be reactive to the pain and create more suffering for ourselves. So practicing presence means just coming into the room and being very present and practicing this as much as possible. Typically, this can be just short times, many times, they say in Dzogchen. And this is great because the more we practice it, the more available it is to us, and the more we're training our mind to experience that more and more. Mindfulness is a way to be present too. So one thing about mindfulness, we may be mindful of doing the dishes or mindful of something else. And when we're mindful of what we're doing, then we tend to be present. Presence is a little broader principle than mindfulness, though, because mindfulness, you can kind of feel that you are being mindful of the dishes, whereas presence sometimes doesn't have that sense of you in it. It's more global. We're present in everything. So explore presence directly. You can use presence really has to do with the world of sensation and the world of awareness. So when we're really exploring sensation, or if we're just being aware of awareness, then we tend to be very present. One exercise that I have, and it's on another video on this channel, it's called PSBB. It's kind of a way to get into presence. And you might want to check it out because it's just a short video that helps you just develop one more technique. There are many, many different techniques for getting into presence. You can chant, you can do a mantra. A lot of spiritual techniques are for us to get into presence. So once we get into presence, what happens from that place is that we can explore things more objectively because we can see things just the way they are. Our preconceived notions are not up. They're not getting in the way and distorting our vision because our mind is relatively quiet. And because our mind is relatively quiet, we can see more clearly what is. Presence really increases our equanimity because we learn to be present no matter what's happening, no matter if there's pain or pleasure or what. We remain present. And when we remain present, we develop equanimity. So pleasure can't take us into addiction, and pain can't take us into suffering. So, practice presence. Thank you. Bye.